Lisa Berkey with us here on the MegaCast. She's the executive director for the Greater West Bloomfield Community Coalition. Thank you for being with us again.
Good morning. Thanks for asking me to join.
Well, and again, we apologize. We just know so many people are following the situation with Let It Play and so many interested parties with the high school student athletes. But in the meantime, you guys are also concerned about our students as well. Talk more about your organization and your mission.
So the Greater West Bloomfield Community Coalition, basically our mission is to build community relationships to help kids with issues like drug and alcohol prevention, internet safety, anti-bullying, mental health, anything we can do to help kids become the best that they can be. So we're always looking for ways to help kids, especially during the pandemic.
I would imagine you guys had your hands full prior to the pandemic, and now we're in the middle of the pandemic. What are you seeing in changes with some of our students right now?
Well, I'm hearing a lot back from the schools, of course, mental health. It's hard as adults, it's hard for us to be stuck at home and not see our friends. So for kids, it's definitely harder. So we've been trying to come up with programming to help parents help their kids. But we're also coming up with, we came up with a toolbox called a coping skills toolbox for some of our elementary school kids.
Because when it comes to our students and our kids, do parents have to look at them differently depending on their age group?
Of course, and your child. I mean, I have two adult children and both of them handled things differently at different ages. So you have to be flexible as a parent and find out what's going to work best with that child at that time.
So some of the advice that you're distributing in these toolboxes, can you share it with us?
Oh, definitely. So it's actually a very hands-on toolbox. It's a toolbox, and inside it there are different items for elementary age kids to learn different coping skills. For an example, we put bubbles in there. And the reason we put bubbles in there, it's just teaching kids how to take a deep breath. Because, you know, you and I know that if we're getting stressed out, taking a deep breath helps us, but they may not. And if you tell them just to take a deep breath, it's not going to work. So teaching them how with bubbles, or we have a journal in there, teaching them to write or draw their feelings helps. We have a stuffed animal that's very, very small and it clips on to your phone or your glasses or your pencil. And it's just a soft feeling. So it's a calm, smoothing touch. We have a slinky. We have two different kinds of fidgets. One is a bracelet that is also a zipper so that they're fidgeting with opening and closing the zipper while it's on their hand. And then it's kind of like a spiky ring that you can put on your finger and you can play with it. Play-Doh, stress ball, bubble wrap, all the things that can help you calm down. Not all of these will work for everybody, but the parents can see which one they like better and help them to know where to go when they're stressed out.
So is this one way for parents to identify when their child is stressed? And also, does it provide the student or the child some relief because it's giving them, distracting their mind in a way?
So yes, it's helping the child distract. I think it's best for the parents to go through the toolbox when they're calm and kind of see which one they like, and then slowly teach them that when the stress is coming or a difficult situation, that they eventually learn to go to that toolbox to pick what helps them cope the best.
Lisa Berkey with us here on the MegaCast. She's the executive director for the Greater West Bloomfield Community Coalition. Lisa, what signs should parents look out for to know when their child is just experiencing stress and maybe acting out, but when they actually need professional help as well?
So I think it varies by age because they children change at different ages, but if you see a drastic difference where they're sleeping all the time and not wanting to do anything, any drastic changes, we normally say if they've changed friends group or their grades have gone down, but I think that's more difficult now because we're not playing with our friends and grades may be dropping just because we're learning differently. But when you see drastic changes, I think it's always better to take them to be evaluated by a therapist versus waiting to something drastically happens. There's nothing wrong with going to talk to someone. It's like, I always compare talking to a therapist like putting away all your files. Don't you feel better when you've taken a stack of papers and filed them away? It just feels like a clean slate. And when you're talking to someone, I feel it's the same way because you're releasing it and learning how to deal with it.
Are there conversation cues that you can offer parents to try to open up some of these conversations on their own as well?
Always open-ended, definitely. I mean, if you ask for yes and no, you're not going to get it. And I think for them to realize that you're experiencing it as well. As a coalition, we have a program called Kids in Charge, which is an elementary-based education program on drugs and alcohol. But each session of Kids in Charge, we make sure includes coping skills, and refusal skills and safe and trusted adults. And I think those are important because kids right from the start are going to hear those topics over and over and know how to cope and know where they can go for help. So if we start making sure they're aware of it, I think that it'll just become common practice to them.
So, on the topic of substance abuse, are you seeing an increase because so many more kids are left at home, more so now by themselves because of remote learning, and that then they may have access to alcohol and prescription drugs in the house?
Correct. We are hearing that things are increasing because kids are in the house across the county. There are 21 coalitions in Oakland County. I'm one of them, and they are starting some advertising on how to help parents with that. So like lock it up, make sure that your drugs are locked up and your alcohol is locked up. We always say that, but now it's even more important. Also, get rid of your unused and expired meds safely. If they're not in the house, the kids can't get to them, and you never want to flush. You want to take them. Most local police departments have drop boxes. Here in West Bloomfield, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They will take our unused and expired meds.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of parents weren't even thinking about this. They're in the medicine cabinet, they leave, and kids go exploring.
Definitely. We always prepare when they're toddlers and they're walking, right? We cover up the corners, we put in things in the outlets, but as a parent, we always have to prepare for the next stage. So as they're getting older and getting, in the tween age, you should start preparing your home accordingly and locking up those things.
So I read a statistic on your website, 90% of Americans with substance abuse use disorder began using substances before the age of 18. Because of the pandemic, as a community, do you think this is going to be a long-term issue that we need to start being aware of and putting plans in place to address this 2, 3, 4 years down the road?
I think we all have to put all sorts of plans in place because so many things are going to be changing. So yes, the 21 coalitions in Oakland County will definitely be looking at that and developing plans as a community to help these kids because we will see differences. And if you remember, even before the pandemic, we had vaping issues. So eventually we're going to have to get back to that as well and concentrate on making sure that our youth stops vaping. It's extremely dangerous.
Yeah, the whole thing just seemed to go away. I don't remember the last time I heard anything about it. Commercials were starting to come on, a lot of PSAs about vaping. I haven't seen anything recently.
No, once February hit, everything seemed to change.
Right?
We had other things to worry about, but we will and we should still be concentrating on vaping. I'm sure the kids are still doing it. It's still very dangerous. It's addicting. And if you do, you're affecting your lungs. And we all know that COVID affects the lungs as well. So we have to be careful with that.
Are you guys seeing an increase of marijuana use with some of the younger kids? Because now, with it being legal in the state of Michigan, more and more adults have it in the house.
So once it became legally medically, we noticed that our perceived risk by our kids decreased. If it was legal medically, they thought, well, if a doctor prescribe it, it definitely can't harm me. So they were right from then thinking it wasn't going to hurt them. So yes, the perceived risk has decreased and usage has gone up by our youth as well as our adults. And with edibles and more recreational facilities opening up in our surrounding communities, West Bloomfield does not have any recreational stores for that.
No, Walled Lake has one. Pontiac is on the verge of getting several, I believe. So that's going to be, I think, a bigger issue going forward. And we like to remind the teens as well, especially the high school students, this could impact their futures. Because, I used to work for ATF, a federal law enforcement agency, and we had to remind people, even though it's legal in the state, it is still illegal in the eyes of the federal government, but also a lot of employers as well. And sometimes when you're, 16, 17, 18, and maybe even if you see your parents or, respected elders that using it, it can be hard to get that message across to them.
Totally correct. Yes. So everyone does have to remember it's still illegal federally. It also, when our youth uses marijuana, it affects their brain. Their brain is not completely done until about 25 years old. So it's still changing and growing. And if you start smoking marijuana sooner, it's going to affect your brain. The other thing I don't think parents necessarily think of, like I said, I have adult children. So when my kids used to go to someone's house and play, I would, make sure what was going on in their home. I would, if I knew they had guns, I would ask if they're locked up, or I may not send my child there. But I think a question for parents now when they're sending their children to play post-pandemic is about edibles. If somebody just has edibles in their candy dish, you need to be careful because kids automatically go to candy in a candy dish. They're not going to ask. So I think parents have to make sure that the parents that are sending their kids to their home are on the same page as they are about things like recreational marijuana.
Concerned about during this time. I will say, conversations like this, I'm like, I am so happy I am just a pet parent because so much stress, and then the additional stress during this time as well. Hey, Lisa, before we let you go, if a parent out there wants more information, where can they find it? And, I know that you have a website, but are there also tips on there for them to be aware of what to look for and the changes in their child?
Yes, so our website is gwbcoalition.org. And on our website, we always list our upcoming programming, but we also have information on vaping, marijuana, alcohol, prescription drugs, and things for them to look for, how to talk to your child. And we also have links to our sponsors, and we have links to the Alliance of Coalitions, who manages the 21 coalitions in Oakland County, because they have even more information.
Lisa Berkey with us, Executive Director for the Greater West Bloomfield Community Coalition. Great to have you with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.